Hello YouTube, this is Mike, and excuse my other links here, that's from my other channel, but I just got a very interesting and understandable comment on this channel, and I thought I would share it with you and share my thoughts with you about it. So the title of this video is of course very controversial and meant to get a rise out of people. Loving a borderline, why your unconditional love is toxic to borderlines. Codependent self-delusion. So if you're not familiar with my channel, this channel is called Do the Four Things and Heal from, what I say, BPD and NPD, something like that. And that's really what this channel is about. I am not a therapist, I am not a psychologist, I am not a licensed anything in the mental health field. All I am is I'm a guy, a normal person who got involved with somebody whom I believe was an untreated, undiagnosed, borderline comorbid NPD. Absolutely destroyed me on levels I couldn't possibly have imagined. Was easily the most painful, toxic experience of my life, even though I was only with her for a short time. And so there, after that relationship, I was so destroyed. I was incapable of moving forward and functioning in my life. And it was easily, I would have to say, in a concentrated experience, the most painful, toxic experience of my life. And so I'm here to share with you what I did to recover. I started this channel, whatever it was, almost 2 years ago now. I started this channel after having been discarded by my now borderline ex. And I was really just trying to talk to myself because I was in so much pain and I was going crazy. I was losing my sanity. I mean, people throw the word out, you know, I felt like I was going crazy, but I really did feel like I was losing my sanity. And I started this channel really just sort of talking to myself on video as if I were, you know, if I were to talk to somebody in my place, what would I say to them? And that's what I did. I uploaded the videos to YouTube, not expecting to create a channel out of it. I did the 4 things. What the name of this channel is, Do the 4 Things. I did those 4 things. I completely 100% healed, totally healed from that relationship. Didn't heal me of all of my neuroses or my other, you know, childhood issues. It helped. Didn't cure me of all those things, but what it did do is it completely healed me from that one relationship. And that's all that I guarantee anybody. If you do the 4 things that I'm going to tell you what to do, if you do those 4 things as if your life depends on it, my guarantee to you is that you will be completely healed from that toxic relationship. And so let's get right into the comment because it's an excellent comment. And even though the person is angry at me and left a comment trying to humiliate me, I completely, totally relate to where this person is. I felt exactly the same way that they do. And I think that this person is sharing where we all have been and how we all think about this. So I'll just get right into it. So this person says, yeah, we were, quote, selfish, unquote, by giving our entire heart and soul to another, question mark, when all we expected was the, all caps, truth, as well as what we were told by our borderlines was similar love in return. Correct? Obviously this person's typing very fast. All caps. I know that's, quote, selfish and an unrealistic expectation, right, bud? LMFAO, which I believe stands for laughing my fucking ass off. Goes on to say, bro, I have a wake-up call for you. Number 1, you were with your borderline for 4 months and you have an entire YouTube channel devoted to it, I'd have been out smashing ass at the bar a week later, not giving a single solitary fuck after 4 months. Laugh out loud at that pussy. Give me a shout when your quiet borderline exhibits near zero symptoms after 8 years of marriage, all caps, and then ghosts you out the clear blue sky. Also, for someone who claims to not, quote, be a therapist, unquote, you sure seem to play armchair shrink like a meth head plays fucking fantasy football. Cheers, Thanos. Now go snap yourself. Now, I don't know if on my video that he's responding to if I had my beard or not, but at one point I did look like Thanos. All right, so you get the gist, right? Bottom line is that this guy is, if I get rid of all of the, the ad hominem sarcasm and attacks, what he's saying is that he wasn't selfish, that he didn't feel that he was selfish. And let's see, how did he put it? He gave his entire heart and soul to another, and all he expected was the truth, and that the borderline would return similar love. Okay? That's exactly how I felt as well. So giving your entire heart and soul to another, is it possible to do that and still be selfish? My answer to that question is yes. Because let's face it, if you're giving your entire heart and soul to another, you're doing it for many reasons, but one of the reasons is you want them to love you back. And you even said as much. You said that that you expected the truth. I don't know what that means. I mean, where's the truth in love anyway? I mean, but we can talk about that later. But you said that you wanted similar love in return. Is that selfish? First off, just because something is selfish, that doesn't mean anything. There's nothing wrong with being selfish. I believe doing the 4 things is the most selfish thing you can do. I also believe it's the best thing that you can do for anybody else as well, taking care of yourself and healing yourself. But that's a very selfish act. I don't have any morals about being selfish. I mean, in fact, on my other channel here, what I do is I tell people to be selfish. I say that the most spiritual thing you can do is to seek after living what gives you the greatest joy and the greatest happiness. When you truly know what your soul wants to do, you will act out in ways that are constructive for yourself and others. So I got nothing against being selfish. The question is it toxic? Can you give your heart and soul to somebody else and have it be toxic? But it definitely is selfish. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it. It's definitely selfish because you gave your heart and soul for the hopes of being loved back. I mean, nobody gets into a relationship hoping that the person won't love them back. Nobody gets in, consciously gets into a relationship with a borderline hoping that they're going to be devalued and hurt and destroyed. Nobody wants that. That's not something anybody ever does. So, now the question is whether or not giving your heart and soul to somebody wasn't narcissistic. Because that's really what we're talking about here. There's a difference between just being selfish and being narcissistically selfish. So what is the narcissism here? Now, again, this guy is trying to make me look bad. And let me be the first one to say that anything that I say about anybody else, anything I say about anybody else is true about me. So if I'm saying that you, whoever you are, if I'm saying that you are narcissistically selfish, that you are damaging the other person, that you are only in it so you can get the love that you want from them, and that you're willing to take them hostage and try, and that all of your attempts to love them and fix them is actually a narcissistic attempt to control them so that they will love you and give you the love you never got as a kid. it doesn't mean if I say that to you that I'm not talking about myself, because I am. So that's why it doesn't, everything you've said, I mean, you're not hurting my feelings. I mean, it doesn't bother me that you're so furious with me. I totally get it, because the most difficult thing I ever did in my life, the single most difficult thing I ever did in my life, and we're talking about divorce. We're talking about watching my fiance, not my borderline, but my love of my life, who passed away a few years ago, watching her die on me. That was horrific. But the most difficult choice that I ever made, the most difficult action I ever took in my entire life, was making the decision to go completely no contact with my borderline ex. That was incredibly difficult. So I understand why you're so angry with me. And I understand why you're so angry with her. Because if what you say is true, and I don't have any reason to disbelieve you, according to you, you say that, according to you, you were with her for 8 years, and according to you, this is interesting, your language here, kept proving to you for 8 years that she was incapable. Oh, that was me, sorry. Never mind. Sorry, you said that you were with her for 8 years of marriage, and that she exhibited near zero symptoms, and after 8 years of marriage, then she suddenly ghosted you out of the clear blue sky. All right, so that would be incredibly painful. Now, I have some doubts as to the description of that. If I take it at face value, what you're saying is that you were with her for 8 years and she was normal, healthy, gave you no signs of emotional dysregulation. There was no walking on eggshells. There was no micro splitting here and there, or fighting, or attacking you, or devaluing you, or disappearing on you, or silent treatments. So I don't believe that. But I do understand the desire to tell yourself that everything was going perfectly and the relationship was wonderful. I understand the desire to focus only on the times when she was idealizing you and treating you treating you like she was wonderful, and magically forgetting all of the negatives, because that's how normal relationships work too. I've been married and divorced, and during my marriage, obviously we got divorced because it didn't work out. We fought a lot of the time, and we were in therapy and counseling and stuff like that. And so when we would fight, it would be nasty, and it would be, nasty fights. But then we would come to I felt some kind of resolution. Something would come up in therapy or counseling that we would start to move forward, and then I would forget it. And I would consciously forget it, because that was the whole idea. The whole idea was to resolve our conflicts and to move forward and to love each other. So I understand the desire, if you've been married with somebody, to sort of put out of your mind the negative stuff and move past it. That's not necessarily denial. But if you're with a borderline, it's not the same. When you're with a borderline, the kinds of problems that you have, the kinds of fights that you have, the things that they do, the things that they say, are always horrifically damaging. They're devaluing on the deepest level. So even if she didn't, quote, split on you and leave, because that's what you're saying. What you're saying here is that for 8 years, she never split on you. By split, if you've been watching the channel, what split means. Split means that they have a split inside of them where they go from loving you to hating you, and it is such an extreme split that it's treated as a permanent thing. And just as a side note, a lot of people, they've been with their borderlines for a limited amount of time, and they want to tell me how great everything is, and they're able to handle their borderline, and they think they know what splitting is, and they don't. What they're experiencing is emotional dysregulation, which I sometimes call micro splits, where they split on you, but then they bring themselves back. They'll be angry with you or do something hurtful or destructive, and then they'll pull themselves back fairly quickly. Or you're able to, one guy was so proud of himself because he was constantly playing, like with a little kid. You know how you laugh when a little kid is crying, and you play games with them to keep them laughing and giggling. He was pretty much saying that that's what he did with his borderline, and it kept her in line, and my response was that all you're dealing with is with a borderline who's emotionally dysregulated, but she hasn't split on you yet. Because when they split on you, you can't do anything to stop it. You can't joke, you can't laugh, you can't love them, you can't yell at them, you can't do anything. There will be nothing that you can say or do which will get them to change their absolute, total, complete commitment to destroying the relationship and destroying you. If you haven't experienced that, then you haven't experienced a split yet. And if you're with a borderline, that is what will happen. So borderlines also often come on my channel and say, we're not the same. You can't paint us all with the same brush. You can't, we're all different. And I say, well, if you don't split, you're not a borderline, because that's the definition of it. In terms of romantic relationships, what defines a borderline is not how they split, all the other normal idiosyncrasies that go along with them, how they are. You can have nice borderlines and mean borderlines. You can have all different kinds of, smart, stupid, intuitive, you could have all the kinds of things that all normal people are. But the one thing that sets the borderline apart from the non-borderline is that they split, and they split most intensely and explosively in intimate romantic relationships. That's where you're going to see the biggest experience of their explosion of their mental illness. If they don't do that, they're not borderline. For me, my borderline split on me. It only took her about 2 weeks before she actually split on me. And then the rest of the relationship was really downhill from there. The roller coaster of hoovering, splitting. It was horrible. So if you were with somebody for 8 years and it took them 8 years to split on you, first off, I have a hard time believing that, but I'm not opposed to that. I don't know. I would be happy to, talk to maybe some psychiatrists who've actually done a lot of, actual study on, how often and all that kind of stuff. But even if that's the case, there's no way you didn't go through emotional dysregulations, and there's no way that you didn't go through walking on eggshells. It's not possible. It's not possible. Because the reason why I call the emotional dysregulation micro splits is because that's what they are. The borderline is constantly splitting all the time. And they may be able to handle it. They may be able to talk themselves out of it. You may just experience them as being moody. Like people will say, I can handle her mood swings. What's really happening is that they're splitting. But it's not so intense that it becomes permanent. But a true split is when inside the borderline, they've been stimulated, usually by either the actual intimacy of the relationship or their perception of feeling intimately vulnerable. So this is why sometimes, you could just look at your watch and that'll be enough. Because in that moment, what you don't know is that when you looked at your watch and then they split on you and this is literally kind of what happened with me. Although I wasn't looking at my watch, but it was the same thing. The borderline said, "Don't look at me like that," and got up and just stormed out of the restaurant. And I'm sitting there like blinking my eyes like, what the hell did I do? What just happened? What was really happening in that moment was that I was taking her out to dinner as a gift for her. We were alone on a lover's trip. She was away from home, and I was taking her out to a restaurant to give her something. And that must have created, as it does, if she wasn't a borderline, it would have been that experience of wanting to get closer to somebody, feeling more loving. So I firmly believe that what was happening is that she was starting to have strong, intimate, loving feelings for me. And what that did is that made her feel vulnerable. And so she split. And so she was just waiting for the excuse. In fact, she was very, very uncomfortable about every little noise. And then I happened to, according to her, I looked at her the wrong way. And that was enough. And in that look, she saw, when I sat her down afterwards, I said, what is it that you think that I did? She said, you sat on the other side of the table and you looked at me like this. And I said, how long? She said, it was like 30 seconds you were staring at me like this. And, I said, I promise you that is definitely not what happened. Definitely not what happened. I was there. And I did not do that. It literally came out of nowhere. There was a smile on your face, and within a split second, you were screaming at me and telling me not to look at you that way, and you were storming out of the restaurant. So a split is, anyway, it's unavoidable. But so I have a hard time believing that you were with her for 8 years and then out of nowhere she ghosted you. But even if that's the case, why are you so mad at me? Because the thing about borderlines is that unless they get treatment, and by the way, borderlines can, I have come to the conclusion, although I can't prove it, I haven't experienced it, but I've done enough research to come to the conclusion that I think it very likely, that borderlines, if they do DBT therapy and they go to group therapy, and if they do that DBT homework exercises every day, that after a few years, maybe 10 years, they can have the ability to manage their symptoms. They'll never be free of their BPD. They will always have that. They will always split internally. But if they do the work, I believe that some of them can gain the ability to control their symptoms. But what was I saying? Anyway, I kind of forgot what I was saying. But you were selfish. Because throughout the relationship, your borderline will tell you. Sometimes they will outright tell you. Sometimes they hint around, sometimes their behavior, most of the time their behavior will tell you, but sometimes they outright tell you, I can't love you that way. I don't see you that way. I can't be that way for you. They do not have the ability to love you the way that you want them to. They have an experience of love, but that experience is not adult love. It is the love of an infant for a parent. And it is extremely volatile. It is very intense, which is why when they are love bombing you, it is, number one, it's honest. They're not lying to you. They're not manipulating you. They are really, when they look at you and they tell you you're the best and you're their favorite and you're the most beautiful, wonderful, whatever it is, they mean it in those moments. They're not lying. And the love and the attention and the affection and the need and the sexuality and all the wonderful things that come with those swings, they're honest, but they will disappear the moment that the other feeling kicks in. And so I don't believe that you were with somebody for 8 years and you didn't experience that. So it was selfish of you to give your heart and soul to somebody that kept proving to you over and over again that they weren't capable of loving you the way you were loving them. What you're saying is you gave your heart and soul, which means a commitment. That metaphor of giving your heart and soul means you're putting your heart into somebody's hand, which means that you are committed to them. You are committed to them from this moment forward, which means that you are committed to act lovingly towards them no matter what they do, that you are committed to being there for them, to protect them, to take care of them, to nurture them, to whatever it is that you can do to make them happier. That's what that means. And she was not able to do that for you. And so by you continually doing that, according to you, you were doing that so that she would give you similar love in return. But that assumes that she has the ability to do so. Borderlines, if they are borderlines, they don't have that inherent ability. They don't have an identity. They don't have a sense of self, which means that they do not have the ability to commit. They cannot guarantee you from one day to the next what their thoughts, feelings, and actions are going to be. That, in order to do that, it means you have to have a sense of self, you have to have an identity, and you have to be consistent in your experience of the world. Borderlines and narcissists dissociate, which means they dissociate from themselves. And that means that every day when they wake up, it's Groundhog Day. They're starting over from scratch. They might have a memory of what they did the day before, but because they don't identify with it, they don't feel any responsibility to follow through. Even if in that day before they said, I'm going to be married to you forever, and I love you, and I will pick up after you, and I will do this, or whatever it is that they're going to do. I won't cheat on you. Whatever it is that they say in that moment, they meant it in that moment, but then they dissociate. And as I understand it, when they go to sleep, it wipes the hard drive clean and they wake up the next day and they're a different person. They remember what that other person did that looked like them and sounded like them and was wearing their clothes, but it wasn't them. Again, talking about my borderline, she did some pretty horrible things quite often, but during one of her 2 or 3 week episodes where she was very distraught and disturbed and dysregulated, and she had been on different kinds of medication and things like that, she did some really damaging, horrible things. And then I thought that she had gotten better. Actually, what had happened is that she had changed facades. And so one of her facades was the good girl who follows the rules and does the right thing, because her mom was coming into town. I didn't realize she was actually shifting to a facade where she dressed perfectly, her hygiene was perfect, her nails were perfectly done. I was in fact shocked when I saw her. I'm like, oh my God, you look amazing. And she was very well put together and very communicative and very proper, and I was like, oh my God, she's better now. I thought that she was better. And it was during one of these, during this episode, that she said, I realized that I did thus and thus and thus and such, and I'm sorry I did that, and I don't remember a lot of what happened. And I was like, I was crying. I was in so much pain because of what she did. And I said, yeah, you did this, and you did this, and you did this, and it really destroyed me. In fact, I'm so angry with you, I need to tell you about it because I don't want to leave. But if I don't talk about it with you, I'll get so angry and so resentful, I'll end up leaving you. So I shared with her, I cried about it. And she looked at me and she said, and I said, and do you remember when you sat and you made this commitment to me? And you said that you weren't going to do this and you weren't going to break up with me and you committed to me all of these things. And she says, yeah, I don't remember that. And the feeling behind it was, because I don't remember it, it didn't happen. And I said, but I do remember it. And I was there and it did happen. And she goes, yeah, I believe you, but I don't remember that. I mean, and so, in other words, she had no identification with what she did. These are the people that you're giving your heart and your soul to. And this is why you're so infuriated, why you're so self-righteously angry, and why you're getting mad at me. Because you want to understandably portray yourself as being which of course you were to a great extent, the honest, loving, sincere person in the relationship, and that you had every right to demand the truth, whatever that means. I don't know why that's a big deal for you. I mean, I believe it, I just don't know what the specifics are. And why you expected her to give you similar love in return. And those are the only two things. You haven't talked about anything else. According to you, the truth, which means that she must have lied to you about something, or confabulated and told you two different truths. And she didn't give you in return the love that you gave, which according to you was your entire heart and soul. So the selfish part was not listening. The selfish part was not listening when at some point throughout those 8 years of marriage, she definitely gave you enough information for you to know, at least at some point, that she wasn't capable. Either she said it or she proved it to you by her actions where she didn't return. And so the act of continuously giving your heart and soul, and that you made it really clear, it wasn't done unconditionally. Giving your heart and soul was under the condition that she give you the truth and that she love you similarly in return. You had 8 years to see that she wasn't doing that. So that means every time that you were disappointed by her, when you gave your heart and soul to her and expected that she give that to you, every time that she didn't do that, you then took that in and got, who knows what your feelings were. Instead of saying at some point, hey, listen, this isn't an equal give and take here. I'm giving everything and I'm not getting back what I'm giving. That's not going to work for me. I'm out of here. That would have been an honest appraisal of the scenario, and that would have been the unselfish thing to do. The unselfish thing to do would have been to acknowledge that the person that you're with is not capable of living up to the contract that you want to have with them. So it's narcissistic and controlling and selfish to keep demanding that the person on the other end of the relationship live up to your expectations. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not judging it. I would want the same thing. I would want somebody to love me in return in the same fashion that I'm loving them. That's just normal. But normal relationships, that's what happens. When somebody doesn't live up to the contract, one or both of them walks away. At some point, somebody says, I'm not getting what I want here, and I'm done. And they get divorced and they leave. But you went for 8 years demanding that she love you in a certain way, and she wasn't able to do that. And that's toxic. That's selfish. That is the epitome of selfishness. And so we want to, as partners of borderlines, we want to whitewash our behavior. And this is the narcissism. Because narcissism means you're wrapped up in yourself. A relationship is not narcissistic. I mean, people have narcissism, but they're with each other. And they're interacting and relating and responding. And so they're changing the contract all the time in order to keep the relationship going. But there is no contract with a borderline. You can't have one. You can't have a contract with an infant. An infant is only a human being that is completely, totally a slave to whatever feeling and impulse is going through them at the moment. And to expect a borderline to not operate that way means that you don't accept them for who they are. And if you accept them for who they are, it means that you accept that this romantic relationship can never work. And the kindest thing you can do is to release them from that. And that's why you go no contact. Going no contact, first and foremost, is for your own health and your own sanity. But the other act of it is that it's an act of love towards the borderline, because you are releasing them from a contract that you are incapable of modifying and they are incapable of adhering to. And that's love, when you accept somebody for who they are. Even though I didn't realize it at the time, it was the most difficult thing I ever did. I did it for my own sanity and for my own health, because it was clear to me that my borderline ex was going to continue to hurt me on the deepest level, and that I had the awareness in that moment that she was not capable of stopping that. It was clear to me that she was going to reach out to me and hoover me in some way, most likely the way that she was hoovering her ex that she left for me. Because when I met her, she reached out to me and then said, "Oh, I have to work things out with my ex-boyfriend," who she happened to be living with. Dumped him for me. And then, while I was out of the country, magically, he ended up staying the weekend with her, but nothing happened. And I know what that was, is that what borderlines will do is that they keep a harem around of discarded relationship partners. So they are discarded. They're people that they're never going to get back together with permanently. But they have them in reserve for when they're going to split on you, but they haven't discarded you completely yet. They'll split on you and they'll run back to these people. Now, those people's perspective is that, oh, they're coming back, it's going to work. They don't realize they're just using them as a trampoline to bounce back and forth between the two. But eventually you go from being that knight in shining armor that they're trying to perfect in their fantasy, and eventually you become one of the harem. But you don't really know when that happens. They go off with somebody else, they come back to you, and then finally they will completely discard you, because the other person will become the knight in shining armor, and then they have to discard you. They push off of you. They use the term monkey branching, but I like the idea of using people as trampolines, because that's really what it is. They fall back into you and then use that to bounce off of you to go into the next one. But they'll bounce back and forth for a while, and then they'll ultimately discard you. You will be ultimately discarded, and that's who you're with. And so you got an ultimate discard, and you're mad at me for that. And that's okay. You won't hurt my feelings if you get mad at me, but because I'm telling you the truth that you were being unrealistic and narcissistic and selfish, trying to force somebody that was incapable of loving you into loving you the way that you wanted. I don't judge you for wanting that. I would want the same thing, but nevertheless, it was selfish and it was narcissistic. And the four things is the only way that I was able to to come out of that narcissism enough to be able to finally do the work to heal completely from that relationship. So I'm happy to take questions. If you guys want to know what the 4 things are, you can watch the video on this channel, or I'm happy to tell you. Again, if you just throw out your feelings, or not your feelings, if you throw out your opinion, you're running the risk of me psychoanalyzing you. So if you're safe if you ask an honest question or if you share an honest feeling. Anything other than that, you're putting a target on your forehead. So James, if you have a question, welcome to the channel. The way I like to do things is that you write the word question in all caps. That's so I don't miss it. I tend to scroll through things that aren't questions. So if you write that, then I'll see it. Retrospectively, he asks, do you feel you would have saved yourself time and pain if you had checked her wild behavior when it first began? What does that mean? Are you assuming that I had the power to control her behavior? Do you think that, because this is obviously you're talking about yourself. So you're asking me the question you ask yourself, which is, do you think that you would have saved yourself some time if you had checked her wild behavior? What does that mean? Are you going to tell her what to do? Are you going to tell her how to be? Are you going to give her rules? What does that mean? First off, where did you get the idea that you had the power to do that? Who gave you that kind of power? I understand why you feel that way, but it's a complete, total delusion. It's a narcissistic delusion for you to think that you have that kind of power. So to answer your question, do I feel I would have saved myself time and pain if I had checked her wild behavior when it first began and let it be known that if you were disrespected, you'd leave? No, it wouldn't have meant a thing. So, but then again, why would you want to do that? Name one healthy relationship that functions that way. You're talking about that's how you treat a child. That's how you treat a toddler. You tell a toddler that you check their behavior, and if you tell them that if they break that again, you're going to give them a spanking, or you're going to lock them in their room, or they're not going to get a candy, and that, so really you think that you're that powerful that if you threaten them, that they're going to love you? So you're asking me, do I think, looking back on it, if I had threatened my borderline with abandoning them, that would have made them love me unconditionally? Why do you want that in anybody? The idea of a relationship is that you don't have to coerce, control, threaten, do anything. They love you because they see you for who you are, and they love you because you exist. And they want to be with you because you treat them well. They don't have to make you treat them a certain way. You don't have to make them treat you a certain way. That's how relationships are supposed to work. But I mean, think about that. I mean, imagine being on the other end of that. Now that you say that, here's again your narcissism, your codependence. Forgive me, this isn't a personal attack. Again, anything I say about you is also true about me, or at least was true about me. But here's your narcissism. You don't see how demeaning that is to somebody? How would you feel if you were just being yourself and somebody came along, your partner, your girlfriend or your wife came along and said, hey, if you don't change that behavior right now and start doing what I want, I'm leaving. How would that stimulate you to want to connect with them and love them? There's nothing loving in that. But again, it works really well if you've got a toddler. So welcome to the channel. The reason why we choose borderlines is because we are projecting onto them what we didn't get when we were little kids. So there's nobody that ends up with a borderline that doesn't have somewhere in their past something they didn't get from their parents. So now you've taken on the role of the father, and you're projecting onto your borderline what must have been projected onto you by your parents. Somebody, your mom or your dad, must have threatened you that if you didn't do what they wanted, they wouldn't love you. You must have at least had that feeling, because you think that's an appropriate way to talk. I mean, in a normal relationship, when somebody gets to that point where they're like, and somebody says, well, why don't you threaten her to do this? In a normal, healthy relationship, the person would say, no, why would I want that? Why would I want somebody to do that? I don't want that. I want somebody to love me. I don't want this. I'm out of here. But you think that's a good idea, that perhaps you should have scolded and threatened her. And again, let's make it clear. The borderline, their main thing is abandonment. That's their main issue. And so you think it's a good idea to threaten a borderline with the thing that frightens them the most. And you think that's going to make them love you? The truth is, there's nothing you can do to make them love you. They're not capable of it. Anyway, so I don't mean to beat you up, but again, I would recommend that you look into the 4 things that I tell you to do. Look into codependence, what it means, because that was a very codependent question, although I understand it. Luna X is a borderline, so again, this channel is not meant for borderlines, but a lot of borderlines come and watch. I don't know why. I suppose they get something out of it. I'm glad I'm being helpful to whomever. But having said that, she says, the split is the hardest thing for me being a borderline. No matter how much treatment I get, it's so far impossible for me to move past the trust issues. So I'm working on myself, and I'd rather be alone. So than hurt somebody else. And she says it's a sad existence. And I can understand, and I feel for you. Listen, I don't say it lightly when I say to people, you have to do the 4 things. And the first one is you have to go no contact. And no contact means that you make it impossible for them to contact you. You don't just wait around and not call them and, oh, they called me. Oh, what do I do? Expect that they're going to come back. Expect that they're going to hoover you. And expect that you'll have to keep doing whatever it takes. I was lucky. I was able to get out, and she never, if she did hoover me, she wasn't able to get a hold of me. But I think also they respond, they know when you mean business. And I meant business. I was dead serious. It was a commitment to myself. When I was on the phone with her the last time, and I said, I agree with you. I think that we're done with each other for this lifetime. And you would be doing me a favor if you blocked me on everything. Block me on your phone, block me on email, Facebook, and make it impossible for us to contact each other. And then I said, you've hurt me more than anybody else ever has. And I really hope that you find what you need. And I hung up. And it was really a commitment to myself. I was telling myself that I can never go back to that. I can never, ever talk to her again. It was the hardest thing I ever did. And I think when you really mean it like that, I think that they sense that. So it means if they're hoovering you back, it means that they're picking up on some part of you that wasn't 100%. And I'm not saying you have to be, because that's the whole thing about going no contact, is that it's a process. You just have to stay committed to it. So I don't have any advice for Luna here, because I'm not a borderline and I don't know what that's like. And so I don't know what she would need. I do know that based on what I've heard, it takes about 10 years, somewhere in that ballpark. It takes 10 years of consistent therapy before they have the ability to manage their symptoms. So it's a big deal, but I'm in agreement with her that I think she's right, that the best thing she can do for herself and others is to not be in a romantic relationship. But again, I'm not the source of what borderline should do. Let's see. Orzi says, I broke up with my girlfriend 1 week ago today, who is an undiagnosed borderline or someone who shows some borderline tendencies. She never once split or snapped at me. And I don't know why you're on this channel, to be honest. The thing is, I wanted her to get checked out or diagnosed so we both know how to cope with it or better, because she wouldn't take meds and she went only to therapy twice. Our relationship was extremely good. Then why did you break up with her? Something's missing here. And I have to tell you, again, this is very typical. Unfortunately, you are sounding like a typical codependent who has some denial or some confusion, because it can't be both. You have to pick one. It can't be an extremely good relationship that you had to break up with her about. Nobody who does that. Borderlines do that, but so come on. Like the other guy made it sound, a certain way too, and this is very typical of codependence. The denial. What keeps you in the relationship is to tell yourself that it's really good. That the fight that you just had, or the split that you just experienced, but she hoovered you back. And listen, they'll sit down and they're extremely good at identifying their feelings. That doesn't mean they're going to be able to follow through on that awareness. But in my experience, the one I was with what's kept me going back was that she was so deeply consciously aware of her feelings and could explain them and be vulnerable and expose her deepest, darkest stuff. And she was able to get in there and pull the same thing out of me that made me feel like, oh my God, we're communicating on such a deep level that this relationship is just going to be so amazing. And it never did. It never panned out. In fact, I know of a friend of mine who married a borderline, I think for 10 years, 2 kids with one. And I remember when he first got together with her, and he was in this kind of haze, and he had this crazed look in his eye, and he was saying, we're moving through issues at lightning speed, as though he was somehow, that their relationship was somehow above any normal human relationship, that they were on a level beyond that, and they were going through these major issues at lightning speed and moving, and I remember getting this really creepy feeling about it. And then, of course, 10 years later, he was completely destroyed and devastated. So, I'm hearing that in here because it doesn't make any sense. If you suspect that she's an undiagnosed borderline, but you say she never once split on you, and at the same time you needed to break up with her and you need to get her diagnosed, so that's obviously you were pressuring her to get diagnosed, which means you were pressuring her to go see a therapist, and you didn't like that she wouldn't take meds, so either she had meds and she wasn't taking them and you wanted her to, or you wanted her to get prescribed some kind of meds. There's all that control in there. And then you say our relationship was extremely good. So something's wrong. Something's wrong here. What else? Toke knee and left eye says, sorry to interrupt. Do Goen have an email I can contact you on? No. I'm not a therapist. I'm not your friend. And what this really means, in my experience, is that you need to talk to somebody. One of the things that happens here on this channel is that people hear me, and I get this all the time. People will say, oh my God, you and I are so alike. I need to talk to you. Would you go and hang out and have a brew with me? Would you, that kind of stuff. So that feeling that you may have, and I don't know if you're having it, but the feeling that you have that you and I are on some wavelength is actually your projection. You finally hear somebody sharing that stimulates you and makes you feel heard. You don't feel as alone. You feel like somebody gets you, and you're having that experience. So the thing that I would recommend that you do is do these 4 things. So the first one is to go no contact with your borderline. And at the same time you're doing that, you do number 2, which is the most important thing, which is go to coda.org and work the 12 steps with a sponsor, and then sponsor someone else after you've done the 12 steps. And then number 3 is, you can do this simultaneously as well, work with a psychologist. And then number 4 is daily meditation, which is really just step 12, or excuse me, step 11. So, to answer your question, no, I'm not going to give out my email. If I gave out my email to everybody that wanted it, I wouldn't get anything done. In the beginning, I did play around with, doing some, I don't know what you call it. I wouldn't call it counseling. I would call it, whatever, some kind of support, and charging money for that. And I decided I didn't want to do that because it's just too much. It's just too intense. But what you really need is, you need to get to Coda, and you need to get some phone numbers and some contacts so that you can talk to other people who are going through or have been through what you're going through, because that's really what you want from me. You want to connect with somebody that understands you. So that's my answer to that question. Luna says the relationship is great, beyond great, until it's not. And it's bound to happen eventually if she's truly a borderline. But here's the thing, Luna. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't. But I can tell you that with an untreated borderline, the relationship is never great. When a borderline is idealizing you, because the great thing about borderlines is, in the beginning they idealize you, and every borderline is different, and the dynamic is different. So they might idealize you for months, maybe even years, I don't know. But during the idealization, the reason why it's only codependents that get pulled into the idealization is because people who are codependent have never truly had somebody truly see them and love them. So there is a spectrum. The spectrum on one end is the psychopathic narcissist, and the spectrum on the other end is the codependent. So the super empaths are partially right when they say there's a spectrum. On the one end you have the super empath, and on the other end you have the narcissist. Now, they're wrong about one thing. The way they're characterizing the super empath is that the super empath is good and is kind and is unselfish and is pure and is true of heart, and that the narcissist is evil and is conniving and all of that. So they're wrong about that, but they are right about one thing. And the one thing that they're right about is that that is the spectrum. But it's the spectrum of the same mental illness. The narcissist and the borderline are on the other side of the line called psychopathy. And on the other side of psychopathy, you have neurosis. The codependent is the neurotic. They're not psychopathic, meaning they don't have technically they don't have a mental illness. They don't dissociate. They have enough of a sense of self. They can, that time is linear. They can follow through and commit. But their neurosis is coming from the same place as the borderline and the narcissist. And that neurosis comes from, in childhood, the parents did not love their children unconditionally. The parents had conditional, contractual love, where the child was either told outright or given the feeling that their worth was based on what they do, not who they are. And what creates a healthy child is, in infancy and toddlerhood, the mother loves the child unconditionally simply because the child exists and has feelings. The child is screaming, the mother hugs them and loves them. The child is happy, the mother hugs them and loves them. No matter what is going on with the infant, the mother hugs and loves the child, which tells the child that they deserve to exist because they have feelings. They need to crap. Good for you. You're going to poop. Good boy. You are happy. You're happy. Good boy. No matter what it is, you are rewarded for it. And then what ends up happening in toddlerhood is that then the parents start putting down rules. They start creating boundaries. The child is disappointed narcissistically and goes through narcissistic injury. And then, because they have 4 years of being told that they have worth simply because they have feelings, they may have a temper tantrum and cry, and the mom might put them in the room and say, when you're ready to come out and behave, you can come out, but until then, I'm going to put you in the room. They'll cry, but then they'll soothe themselves. They'll tell themselves on an unconscious level, they'll say, it's okay that you're sad, and even though this is horrible and you feel so angry at mommy because mommy didn't give you a cookie or mommy didn't do whatever you wanted mommy to do, you're okay, you have worth, you have value. And then they're able to wipe their tears, and then they go out and they learn how to behave. And that's why borderlines don't know how to behave. That's why narcissists don't know how to behave. They don't know how to behave because they don't have the ability to self-soothe. And they don't have the ability to reflect back to themselves that even though you're feeling this way, it's okay. In fact, I'll share with everybody the most important positive affirmation in existence. And I say it to myself all the time. And it goes like this. Even though I have this feeling, I thoroughly and completely accept myself. Try that next time. Maybe borderlines, you can try this next time you're splitting. Before you split, before you say, even though I have this feeling, I thoroughly and completely accept myself. When I do it, I feel this calmness kind of come in. It gives me just a little bit of a buffer between taking an action on an impulse. Because that's really all it comes down to. The simplest thing is that's what creates a borderline. That's what creates a narcissist. Is that they were never given the tools to be able to self-soothe when they are narcissistically injured. That's it. It's that simple. But it's deadly. So anyway, but the point I was making, you say the relationship is great, beyond great until it's not. It's actually not. Because when a borderline is idealizing, it's pure projection. I believe you that it feels great. And I believe that for the codependent, it also feels equally great. But that's because they're both coming from this experience of not having an identity or having a sense of worth. Because when a borderline idealizes on somebody who's not a codependent, which never happens, by the way, because borderlines have an unconscious radar. They can feel that you understand them. They can feel that you have that same empty black hole inside of you. They can sense it. The way that they experience that is, oh my God, you're the only person who understands me. Your borderline ever said that to you? My God, nobody understands me like you do. What that really means is, if you translate it, I can see that you have a black hole inside of you based on not having any value for yourself. You don't believe that you're worthy of love simply because you exist. And I relate to that. And because I relate to that, I now project onto you all of the love I never got. And now I can transfer onto you all of the love I never was able to give my parents. And the codependent sees in the borderline, sees how deeply damaged they are, sees that they're broken, sees that they want desperately like an infant to be loved, and then what they do is then they project onto the borderline what they never got, which is why the codependent wants to love nourish, take care of, and commit, because that's what the codependent didn't get and always wanted. And so it feels really great because the feeling is, for the first time in your life, you're being seen on the deepest level, you're being loved on the deepest level. But what's really happening is that it's just projection. It's not real. So when a borderline, if they were to idealize somebody who wasn't borderline, the person would go, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right to me. Something feels off. I feel kind of creeped out. I remember one person said that to me once. I mean, I think my fiance had just passed away. That's what it was. No, I take it back. I had just gotten out of my divorce. So I had just been dumped and divorced, and I was really desperate for love. And I met this woman, and almost immediately I was telling her, how wonderful she was, and I was just throwing compliments on her. I was love bombing her. I mean, I would have followed through, but I was love bombing her. And she said, I don't know, why are you talking to me like that? You don't even know me. My thought at the time was, oh my God, how sad she can't accept somebody loving her. But looking back on it, she was creeped out because I was, she hadn't earned it. So it's really not. When I was being love bombed, it felt really insecure, and I felt like it was like thin veil of sugar that had hardened, that if you just tap it, it would shatter. It's sweet and it tastes good, but it was going to be gone, and I was afraid I was going to do something to screw it up. And sure enough, I was right. My instinct was telling me, you're on the verge of being discarded here. So I believe what you're saying, but in terms of comparing it to what we would call, quote, healthy relationships, it's really not great. It creates instability. This is what makes the codependent even more committed to being, to give the borderline what they want, because on an unconscious level, they know that they have to earn it through their, making the borderline feel loved. All right, what else? Robert Wilco. Okay, I agree with that. Orzies now is going to tell us why he left the perfect relationship. He says, I left for one, I was scared. So it couldn't have been that great. You were scared. And still learning what BPD is. Why would you need to learn what BPD was if it was such a great relationship? None of that makes any sense. Secondly, she would talk about how bad her life is when she hates herself, and it would put lots of strain on me to try and keep her happy. Right, so you're a codependent. So she was telling you that your worth was based on you keeping her happy. Mine did the same thing. Mine, while she was love bombing me, said, what I really want in my life is I want to have a strong masculine presence, like aura around me. And I will do anything to make sure that he's happy and he's exuding that, because when he's happy, then I can sit in his aura and feel happy myself. Now, not knowing anything about borderlines, I thought that sounded awesome, that she was going to spend her whole life making me happy. But what she was really saying was, I have no way of being happy within myself, and it's your job to make me happy. So if you're not in a good mood, then I'm not going to be happy. And sure enough, when the idealization started coming apart, that's exactly what she said. She said, you seem like you're not in a good mood, and I don't know if I want to be with somebody who's not in a good mood, because if you're not in a good mood, I'm not going to feel good. And then it was my job I'd better find a way to be in a good mood pretty fucking quick, because if I didn't, she was going to leave for no other reason other than I wasn't in a good mood. Which again, you're in a relationship with somebody that loves you, they're not going to be affected by the fact that you're not in a good mood. They might be affected if you are harmful, or if you're in such a bad mood all the time that you are harmful to them or hurtful, or but if you're having a bad day, if somebody loves you, they're going to say, come here, let me take care of you. What's going on? Oh, I'm so sorry. Or they're going to say, honey, that's okay. I understand. You need some time to yourself. I'll leave you alone for a while and, let me know when you're feeling better. I understand. They're happy to do whatever. You want me to be there for you? You need some space? I love you. Whatever you need. Borderlines, they're not going to do that. You're unhappy. They're going to either take that personally, or they're like mine. She was using my identity in order to, she was using my identity to do for her what my identity was doing for me, which is I was, at least in the beginning, able to have a sense of self, and I was able to create my own happiness within myself. She can't do that, so she wanted to slide and use mine, which ended up pulling all of the, whatever good feelings I had, ended up like sucking it out of me like a vacuum cleaner. And that's why I was so starting to get cranky and unhappy, because there was a succubus pulling all of my identity out and feeding off of it. And it's never good enough. It's never going to be enough. That's why there will never be enough love that you can give a borderline where they go, okay, I've got enough love now. Thank you. I can now love myself, and now I'll be there for you. It'll never happen. As one borderline said, it's like a black hole. No matter what you put in, it just disappears. And that's the sad part. That's why it takes them 10 years of therapy before they can, manage their symptoms. Yeah. Now listen to how codependent this is, Orzi. So you're welcome to my channel. You're obviously new, but this is classic codependence. You say, I noticed I would be extremely scared and sad when I was alone, thinking about the things she would say to herself. This is called projection. Projection is when you project onto somebody else your own internal experience. Now, this is a projection that was stimulated. So she did have that, and she stimulated you to take on that responsibility. But the only reason that it stuck is because you already felt that way. Again, a non-codependent, healthy person, if somebody comes to you and says, not that yours said this, but she definitely stimulated it in you and wanted it from you. But if somebody came to you and said, I just feel so crappy about myself, and I hate myself, and I don't know what I'll do if I'm alone, and you need to make sure that I never feel like that. Somebody would say, I'm really, really sorry that you feel that way, but that's not my fault. I didn't do that to you. I can't take that away. If you want, I'll be there with you while you do whatever you need to do. Do we need to call a psychiatrist or a psychologist? Do you need to go to church? What is it that you need? I'll be there and hold your hand, but I can't possibly do that for you. And they would say, listen, you're on your own. If that's what you want from me, I'm sorry, I can't give it. I'm just human. You didn't say that. You said, I'm Superman. It's my job to take responsibility for your feelings, even though I didn't create them. And I am going to be scared and sad about you. But what's really, again, you were alone when this happened. So you didn't feel like that when she was there as much. But when you were alone, you started to feel those things. And instead of having the ability to look in and say to yourself that you have negative thoughts about yourself, that you can't stand being alone, that you don't have a purpose if you're not there to fix her. And that feeling is like death to you. Instead of being able to do that, in order to tolerate it, you projected it onto her, and you're the one with all of the power. You're like, Superman wanting to save the poor kitten, but you don't know where she is. She's caught in a tree somewhere. She's meowing, and I can't save her. But it's really you. You're the one that wants to be saved. You're the one who's sad. You're the one who doesn't like yourself. She has the same feeling, but you now have an excuse to project that onto somebody else. This is classic codependence. Orzi, it doesn't matter whether she had tendencies or not. Again, I think you're in denial. Because here's the truth. If she has borderline personality disorder, she is incapable of loving you. She's incapable. She doesn't have the tools. Asking an untreated borderline to love you is like asking a man with no legs to run a marathon. They can want to do it, they may think they can do it, but they can't do it. If you truly understand what BPD is, you will understand that there's no hope, there is no possible way she could ever love you without destroying you. So you know what you tell yourself? I think she just has tendencies. I think if she just went to a therapist, then she could work on those tendencies and then she'd love me. How do I know you're thinking that? Because I felt the same thing about mine. I thought if I could just get her into, and I'd sit there with her and she'd sit there and the therapist would tell her what borderline personality disorder was and how it's this and that and she can't, she can't commit and she blah, blah, blah. And I would sit there and nod my head and I'd say, and I'm here for you, honey, and we'll get through this together. And in my fantasies, she would go, oh my God, I'm so glad I went to that therapist. Now I know what's wrong with me. Okay, honey, I love you. I won't act that way anymore. In fact, thank you so much for being there for me. I love you more than ever. That's not how it works. The reality is the most honest thing a borderline could say if they could become completely, totally, utterly aware and conscious is that they would say, I don't have the ability to commit to you and to love you. I only know how to hurt people that I love. I can't do anything other than that. The closer you get to me and the more love you give to me, the worse I'm going to make you feel. In fact, let me prove it to you. This is a comment from Borderline, I believe. Let me get to all the comments here. So let me go to all the comments. I feel, what's going on here? Are these my comments? No. Okay, let's get to the comments here. And you're going to hear from the mouth of a borderline exactly what they do. And you are going to be shocked when you hear it. All right. Oh, that's a codependent. That's a codependent. Where's that borderline? Where's a borderline when you need one? I may not find it. I may not find what I'm looking for. I'm going to give up here in a second. Okay, am I almost there? Am I almost ready to give up? That's the thing, the borderline's never there when you need it, you just have to walk away. All right, sorry, I'm just trying to be funny here. I'm going to try and repeat what I thought as I remember what she said. Is this it? No, that's not it. All right, so I'm just going to have to do it from memory. But here's what she said. And I'm trying my best to get as close to verbatim as possible. She said something along the lines of, how badly can I hurt him so that he will realize that I do not deserve to be loved and he will never come back. In the depth of the soul of the borderline is that even though they said they love you, they need you, they chase after you, they love bomb you, when they split, if this is after years of therapy, they come to this realization that what's underneath that is, I have to be so horrible to you that you will never come back and love me because I don't deserve it. And you have to understand that the borderline comes to that conclusion as an infant. This is the deepest, the closest thing they have to an identity, is that I deserve to be discarded. That is their belief, their deepest belief about themselves. they take that on because the desire of all infants and all people is to make the mother happy. If you can make the mother happy, the mother will love you. If the mother loves you, you will survive. For a borderline, the message that they either directly got or intuited or came to the conclusion within their little infant brain, the conclusion that they came to is that what will make mommy happy is if I prove to her that I know I am unworthy of love. So when you love a borderline and that love hits, their knee-jerk response is to convince you that they do not deserve your love. If you're committed to loving them, that means they have to attack you and destroy you so that you will eventually hate them. And once you understand that that is what's going on at the very depths of a borderline's psyche, then you realize that all of your attempts to love them and to get them to love you are fruitless. And Orzi, you don't know that yet. That's why you're telling yourself, I think she just has tendencies. Because if she just has tendencies, then there's the possibility that you can get her to love you. But if you really, truly accept that she is a borderline and you understand what that means, then you'll know that once you say to yourself, my partner's a borderline, you're simultaneously saying, and there's absolutely no hope of her ever loving me. She'll only hurt you. The only thing she's capable of doing in her untreated state is destroying you at the deepest level. And she'll stay with you and she'll play the game with you. She'll reel you back in. She'll discard you, reel you back in until there's nothing left of you. Until you finally take on her essence. Because what she's trying to do on an unconscious level, not consciously, on an unconscious level, what she's trying to do is she's trying to get you to feel exactly the way she feels on the deepest level. Her unconscious reasoning for that is that if I can pass this off on him, I can cure myself. In other words, when they're discarding you, they believe that they are discarding their own self-hatred. They project it onto you. They hate you with everything that they have. That's their own self-hatred. And their feeling is once I can just spew this out onto you, discard you in the worst way possible, I'll be free. And that is happening simultaneously as they're reaching for the knight in shining armor that is coming to them. Because they almost never do it, without that. So as they're pushing you away and hating you, they're reaching up. This is why they call it monkey branching. They go from one branch to another. And what will happen is that at some point, it may take years, but at some point you will get to the final discard, where you finally take on, because that's what you've said, in order to be with a borderline, your contract is you say, I'm going to take on your pain. I can handle it. I'm Superman. Stay with me. I will take your pain from you. You will be pain-free, and then you will love me. And the borderline says, yes, if you can take my pain away, I absolutely will love you. And then what ends up happening is that no matter how much pain you take on, it's never enough because there's still some left. And they start to resent you. They start to resent you because your job was to take the pain away, but the pain hasn't gone. It's still there. It's worse than it was before. And I hate you for my pain. And then they push you away, and then they realize that there's still some love left in you, so they pull you back in. They take some of your love, they push you away. They take some of your love, they push you away. And then finally, you will become one. You will become a borderline. And you've said that, Orzi, I left, for one, because I was scared. So now you're starting to take on her fear of intimacy. Or she's stimulating your, again, this is again projection. You may have borderline tendencies. If you're a codependent, you do. All codependents have borderline tendencies. As, I don't know who said it, Vaknin says it, but I think he's quoting somebody else, that a borderline is a failed narcissist. Means that they tried to create this narcissistic firewall where they just put on this persona of being perfect, but they can't do it. So they failed at it. So they bounce back and forth between narcissism and infantile need. Narcissism, infantile need. The codependent is a failed borderline. The codependent has just enough identity where all they can do is think about, how can I get somebody to love me? I know I will pour all my love onto you until you literally are, the weight of my love drives you to your knees, and you then will commit yourself to me. This is the codependent fantasy. The codependent fantasy is that they'll be so full of love that the person who's afraid of it, their fear and their boundaries and their self-protection will melt under the intense heat of Superman's laser eyes of love. This is every codependent's dream, and it's why the guy said, I'll repeat it again, what he said was that, where did he go? Anyway, I can't find it. But the guy who I originally mentioned, who said that that it was that he's selfish. You mean I gave her my heart and soul, and all I wanted in return was the truth, and that she would love me in kind? What he's saying by that is, by giving his heart and soul, that is a tactic of control. So the codependent wants to overwhelm you with their love in the hopes that you will be unable to resist it. Borderline does the same thing. That's why the codependent responds so well. It's a dance. They understand that dance. When a borderline is love bombing them, they love it, but they get it. They go, oh, I know how this dance goes. Now, and then once you've given it to me, now I'm going to give it to you. And then you give it to me, and then I give it to you. All right, let's see what else. All right, what else? James. Hi, James. So let's go back to your first comment. You asked me if retrospectively I would have saved myself time and pain if I had checked her wild behavior when it first began. So you haven't said it, but based on that, by the way, thank you, Julia Williams, for throwing $5 down. I appreciate that. By saying that, what I get from that is that you've been with a borderline. You've gone through the pain and or been discarded, or you're still with a borderline. And your belief is that you can, as I said, check them, give them that childish boundary of, if you don't get it together, I'm going to leave you. So you better shape up. Pull up your big girl pants, and you better eat all of your vegetables, or I'm never going to feed you again. That tells me that you've been with one. So did it work? Were you able to get out of it? Are you happy? Why are you on my channel? So you say, yeah, Mike, what I meant by check her is literally telling her if she is rude and treats you like trash, that you will leave her. Why? Again, why would you do that to yourself? That is so incredibly self-demeaning. Why would you do that to yourself? It's more a reflection on you than her. that you're, forgive me for saying so, but that you're so pathetic, you're so desperate that you're going to actually interact with a woman like that because you don't believe that there's a woman out there who can see you for who you are and treat you with respect. That in order to keep a woman, you have to shame her, yeah, like a little kid. You have to shame her like a 4-year-old and threaten to leave her. I mean, there's nothing that you're going to say that's going to make that sound any better to me. Every man has to have the strength and confidence to walk away from toxic and damaging people. But that's not what you're doing. When you give her an ultimatum, you're not walking away from her. You're trying to manipulate her. You're trying to get her act straight. You even asked that. Do I think if I had done that earlier on, that it would have, helped things out? If, when you really truly walk away from somebody who's toxic, you say, you know what? I love you, but this is damaging to me. I wish you all the best, but for my own health, I have to leave. You don't threaten them. You don't cajole. You don't give them ultimatums. That's what you do when you're trying to control somebody. So again, James, this is classic codependence. You say you're not just randomly threatening somebody to leave for no reason. It's about the horrible behavior that a man needs to be able to... What is this about a man? What about women? You mean women don't have to do that, but men do? What is this about a man? I mean, you're giving me so much information about your relationship with your mom. Is this that whole MGTOW thing where you have to treat women like shit in order for them to love you, or the whole player thing where in order to get laid you have to make a woman feel like shit so she has to sleep with you, throw her boundaries away so that she'll sleep with you? I mean, it works, but again, why would you want to be with somebody like that? Why would you have that much self-hatred? Now, I'm saying all of these questions are rhetorical. I understand why, because I've been there. I know why you're doing it. But I'm here to tell you that's not healthy. That's not like you're standing up and being a healthy man. It's not like if you say to some woman, you know what, if you don't get your shit together and if you don't start doing A, B, C, D, F, and G, I'm going to leave you because I'm better than all that. You better recognize, girl. I mean, if you do that, it's not like she's going to go, oh my God, you're so right. I don't know what I was thinking. You really are a valuable person. And now that I know that, I'm going to treat you with value. You think that's what, is it really that simple? Of course not. She either has it or she doesn't. And you think by humiliating her, by threatening her, by manipulating her, that's going to make her treat you with real love? It again shows that you don't know what that is, that your love is based on, the message you're giving her is that my love for you is based on your behavior. It's not based on who you are. It's based on your behavior, which is again your projection, which of course she is telling you the same thing. When you're with somebody that is healthy, that truly loves you, you don't ever have to do that. If there's something that they do that annoys you or bothers you, you can say, hey, when you do this, it makes me feel like that. And they'll go, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I won't do that again. You don't ever have to threaten them. You don't have to say, you know what, if you don't start saying this to me and doing this to me, you never have to do that. Okay, what else? And again, here we go with the men versus women thing. This is how many men handle their relationships. So you sound like a MGTOW. All MGTOW guys are guys who didn't get love from their mom. Sorry, there's no two ways around it. So I already know your mom didn't love you unconditionally, and I'm sorry for that. Mine didn't love me either. This is why I understand it. And so you think that this false tough guy thing is what's going to get women's respect, and it doesn't. And we could talk about that, but a real woman, none of this will get any respect from her. In fact, she'll see you coming a mile away. She won't want anything to do with you. She will cross the street before you even end up on her block. You'll never even get her in your sights. So all this stuff about how men have to do this and men have to do that, this is all that MGTOW, sorry, but pussy bullshit. It's pussy bullshit. I hope that doesn't hurt your feelings, but it really is. See, this is how many men handle their relationships. They wear the pants and keep the peace amongst the household. What the fuck does that mean? keep the peace amongst the... You mean you're a cop? So in order to be a man, you have to walk around and be a cop and tell people how to act, so everybody's a child or a criminal? And this is how they do it? Real men do that? No, real men don't do that. Real men earn their respect so that they never have to do or say anything to have people want to follow them. You know, if you follow Lao Tzu, he says, you know, a true master is somebody who can get people to do the right thing without them ever having to know it. They never know that they've been instructed or helped in any way. You think you have to walk around and pull your pants up and wear your badge? I'm the peacekeeper in the house? Stopping bad behavior and keeping order within the home and the family? I'm sorry, but yeah, this is just so... I hope it doesn't hurt you. So I really disagree with your way of dealing with things, as it's just plain enabling. What the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about? When I go no contact, it's forever. It's not a manipulation. It's not a tactic. It means that I know that that person does not see me and respect me. How is that? How does that in any way, what did you say? Let's see, how did you say it? Enable. No, what you do is enable it. Because again, your worth is based on what you do, because you're a codependent. And so your way of earning it is to wear the badge and to be the peacekeeper and to tell people what to do. And if people didn't misbehave, you would have no worth. That's why you were with a borderline. I know, because I did the same thing. You have to prove your worth all the time. If somebody really loved you for who you were and didn't, quote, misbehave, you wouldn't have anything to do. You wouldn't have any value. You would hate yourself, and you would, well, first, she wouldn't be attracted to you to begin with. Not because you're an unattractive person on multiple levels, but because you want to engage on this transactional relationship. And a real healthy woman doesn't want that. She's not interested in that. Neither is a healthy man. They're not interested in that. Anyway, what else? Luna says, you've given me new light onto my own issues with my BPD. I know having people with this personality disorder watching your videos may seem odd, but I really needed to hear this. Not sugar-coated. Oh, good. I'm glad it's helpful. Not sugar-coated by a therapist or a friend. I think that's one of the... I think a lot of therapists don't understand BPD. I think that they've read a lot of books about it. You know, I know that there's, you know, I've quoted one video on here where there were two therapists, and they were talking about BPD, and they were saying that people shouldn't stigmatize borderlines. And then they went on to say that, you know, that's what borderlines do. They have this insecurity around attachment, and so they will have these temper tantrums. And then they went on to hypothesize. And the one guy said, and I'd like to believe that if I was in a relationship with a borderline and they did their thing, that I would be able to step back and go, hey, you know, that's what they do. And then I wouldn't react to them and I wouldn't stigmatize them. And then the assumption was that the borderline would then be okay because the person didn't react to their, you know, their bad behavior. And I went, this guy's never been with a borderline. He has no idea what he's talking about. And then the other therapist chimed in and said basically the same thing. You know, we wouldn't get mad at, you know, your grandmother who had, when you think about that, I mean, how demeaning that is. When your grandmother who has dementia, you wouldn't get mad at her if she lost her temper and forgot what was going on. Borderlines have this and this and this. You can't get mad at them. I was like, oh my God, these people have never been with a borderline. They have no idea what they're talking about. They have no idea the depth of absolute devaluation you experience from them. They had no clue. The hubris that they had to think that they could know how to react to a split in such a way that the borderline would go, oh, thank God you didn't get upset and stigmatize me. Okay, I'm going to stay. No clue. So I hear what you're saying about therapists sugarcoating things, and friends have an agenda. They don't know what to do. Everybody's doing their best. I can say to you straight, because I don't have an agenda with you. I'm just some talking head on YouTube. You're not my friend. You're not my girlfriend. You're not anything like that. So I don't care what happens. You watch my channel, you don't. So I can be honest with you. But, this is why, it's hard. You can't be friends with an untreated borderline. You can't date them because you end up wanting to be their friend. You end up wanting something from them, and that's what causes the problem. So, yeah, I can see why this might be helpful. Okay, what else? Juliana, why were you, I can't tell if you're borderline or if you're codependent. Orzi says, I did lots of research on channels like this. She doesn't look like a borderline. And so, why are you here then? Why are you doing research? Here's the thing, dude. People do not spend hours on YouTube researching borderline personality disorder if they're not with a borderline. So I'm going to say there's a 99.9% chance she's borderline, because if you've been this dysregulated and fucked up by it to such a degree that you have to try and figure out why is she acting this way, she's borderline. That's it. You can keep telling yourself whatever you need to tell yourself. Listen, here's the deal. If you're a codependent, you're addicted to her. Forget about being a codependent. If you're in a relationship with a borderline, you're addicted to her. There's an actual chemical addiction going on in your brain. They call it trauma bonding, but it's an addiction. Addicted people, their whole being will try and reorient themselves to reality to make reality palatable for them. And as I said, the reason why you want her to only have borderline tendencies is so that you can get her into therapy and get her to love you. You still have hope. You haven't yet accepted the reality that she has a mental illness that prevents her from having an identity and creating and following through with love. She's not capable of it. She's not a bad person, but trying to get them to love you is like trying to get a dog to play chess with you. The dog wants to please you. They can't. They don't have the thumbs. They don't have the ability. They don't know how to do it. Borderlines don't know what it is that you want. They can't grasp it or comprehend it. And they can't do it. Even if they can grasp it, I could be wrong. Maybe they can grasp it. If they're untreated and they're borderline, they can't do it. And here's my prediction. You ready? And you can remember a month or a year from now that I told you this, but here's my prediction. And I'm totally okay if I'm wrong. I will have no problem if you come on and prove to me that I was wrong. I will be the first person to admit it and apologize publicly. My prediction is that you're going to keep watching channels like this and keep researching so you can prove to yourself that she only has borderline tendencies. You're going to let her hoover you back into the relationship. And then you're going to do like what this other guy does. You're going to try and lay down some laws because you think like he does. That's what a man does. A man is, wears a badge and is a keeper of the peace and has to manipulate people and coerce people. And you're going to tell her to go to therapy, and she either won't go to therapy and she'll end up discarding you. Even though you tell yourself, I broke up with her, you'll keep doing that, but you'll stay going back to her until she finally chews you up and spits you out. Or she'll go to therapy. And that will destroy the relationship also. Because here's the other thing. If she goes to therapy, then what's going to happen is she's going to realize if the therapy takes, number one, that might not take, which you'll end up back to square one again. But even if it takes and she wants to follow it, she's going to realize that she chose you for the wrong reason. She's going to realize that she chose you because you remind her of her dad. And she wants to project onto you and transfer onto you all of her daddy issues. And when she realizes that that's not what she wants and that that's not love, she's not going to want to be with you anymore. And you're going to have gone through all of this trying to get her into therapy because she only has borderline tendencies, and you're still going to end up with your dick in your hand. So either way, you're going to end up with your dick in your hand. Is that what you want? That's my prediction. I also know there's nothing I can do to talk you out of it. If you're certain that she's the one, you're going to fold reality in whatever way you need to in order to make that happen for yourself. But that's my prediction. I hope I'm wrong, but that's what I've seen and that's what I've experienced. See what else? Yep, she did show you love, but it wasn't real love. It was a childish emotion. Doesn't mean that she didn't honestly feel it, but it didn't result. See, here's this. Love is a commitment. Love is an action. It's not a feeling. Borderlines are filled with intense loving feelings that come and go like the weather. You think that means something because you're a codependent, which means that your love is based on your contractual obligation of being loved based on what you do. So whatever it is, either you did do something or she projected onto you that you did something, and she threw a bunch of loving feelings at you, and then she turned around and fucked you over later on, abandoned you, devalued you. That, by definition, means she can't love you. Love means that you wake up the next day and you say, I so fucking hate that I married you yesterday in Vegas. Oh my God. But you know what? That's not your fault. I chose to do that. I made a commitment and I'm going to follow through with it. Love is after everything's faded and your farts smell and you lost your job and you can't be what you were before, that your partner, who now doesn't have loving feelings towards you, acts with love towards you tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, because they know that's what they would want if they were in your position, and they have empathy to understand you even if they don't have the slightest bit of love for you in the moment. That's what love is. You, Orzi, don't know that. You think love is a feeling, and you remember those moments when she had googly feelings for you and you say, she did love me. But when I use the word love, it's a verb. Love is an action, and borderlines, by definition, are incapable of committing to loving action and sticking with it. Because if they were, they wouldn't be borderlines. That is the definition. In romantic relationships, they are incapable of digging down into their identity and following through. Because when you wake up the next day after you've gotten married in Vegas and your feelings are gone, your identity says, my integrity is based on me following through because I still identify with what I did yesterday. I don't feel it now, but I identify with it. And in order for me to keep my identity intact, I have to follow through. This is what is called integrity. Borderlines, by their nature, don't have integrity when it comes to love, not because they're bad people, but because they don't have an identity. And they don't have an identity because their mom didn't love them unconditionally. It's not their fault. So they have to go to therapy for 10 years to craft one. They have to Frankenstein an identity with paper clips and duct tape and rubber bands, and they have to maintain it. They have to put it together and they have to maintain it every single day. They have to wake up every single day and they have to put that thing together and they have to remember. I said yesterday that I was going to go to work and I told my husband that I was going to go to the store and buy him a cake, and I told him that I would be nice to him, and because that's who I said I was, I have to follow through, and it's the worst, it's the most painful thing, and I'd rather put a bullet in my head, but I'm going to do it because I've crafted this identity and I'm going to make it through the day with this identity. That's why they have to be in therapy for 10 years. It takes 10 years to Frankenstein the identity. And it's always on the verge of falling down. It's a house of cards. All right. So I'm not going to continue on with Orzi. Orzi, you can either listen to me or not. My suggestion to you is to do the 4 things, but I know you won't do that until it gets bad enough, and it hasn't gotten bad enough yet. You're going to keep playing with fire until all of your skin is burnt off, and then you can come back to the channel, and then you can do the 4 things if you want. Okay, what else? Okay, what else? Zach says, I may be going through a divorce right now because my wife has BPD and she won't get help. What do you mean? Either you're going through a divorce or you're not. Are you saying you're thinking about going through it? I mean, Zach, I kind of already told you, what I think. I'm sorry that you're married. Your wife has untreated borderline personality disorder. The kindest thing you can do for her is to divorce her and say, I think you might have BPD. It's your responsibility to go do something about that, but I'm just letting you know in case you don't know. I may be wrong. It's not my responsibility. Your life is yours, but for me, my health, I'm out of here. I got to go take care of myself. I can't do this anymore. Let's see what else. All right, I'm just trying to get to the questions here, or something that I can respond to with some value. Let's see, ether ego. I can't tell if you're a man or a woman. I think a truly righteous and masculine man, those are interesting words that you chose, righteous. A righteous and masculine man can get a woman out of the Lilith/BPD energy and get her to reconnect with her soul/Mary Magdalene energy. Well, if you think you can do that, then I will be the first, you'll be the first in history. And I will be the first to shake your hand. I honestly wish you well. My belief, based on my experience and my research, is that you do not understand what borderline personality disorder is. Because that would be like saying, I think a truly righteous and masculine man can get a person born without legs to magically grow legs and run a marathon. If you believe you have that power, then you are Jesus in the flesh. I'm willing to bet you identify as a super empath. Or you're a woman. If you're a woman, it's even worse, because that means you expect a man to be superhuman, and you're not. If you're a borderline, it's even triple worse, because it means that you really are expecting somebody to come along and take responsibility for your personality disorder. Either way I look at it, if you're a guy, you think you're Superman and you're in for some serious pain. If you're a woman and you think that a man can do that even if you're not a borderline, then I would not want to be that man and date you, because nobody would ever live up to that. There's no man on the planet that could ever live up to that standard. If you're a borderline, then that's all borderlines kind of think that way. So maybe get some help. I don't know. But I think that's a recipe for disaster, in my humble opinion. Zach Brunoff, if you have a question, again, I like to see the word question. And again, let's remember, this channel is about doing the 4 things. I'm spending a lot of time babbling, but this channel is really about doing the 4 things. I'm willing to bet that nobody I'm talking to here so far is doing them. Zach says, what about someone that fell in love with you but then developed BPD after? That's not how BPD works. Where did you come up that BPD is something that happens later? BPD is created in infancy. Like it was triggered by birth control and abandonment issues. Yeah, so Zach, I encourage you to do some research on what BPD actually is, because what you're describing is not. Ether Ego, haha, Jesus did it with Mary Magdalene. Great. If Jesus existed, he was God. So you are saying, Ether, whether you're a man or a woman, you either want to be God, which means that you're delusional, you don't understand you're just a human, or you want to be with somebody who's not human. So I would, those all sound like some pretty serious psychological issues there. What else? Yeah, Ether Ego. So it sounds like you're a man. Well, anyway, best of luck. I hope you find what you're looking for. I don't think you will. So this is about doing the 4 things. If you want to be healed from the damage of this relationship with a borderline, I only know the 4 things that I tell you to do. You can scroll back up and see what they are at the beginning. And in my experience, you have to do all 4 of them, and you have to do all of them thoroughly with everything that you have. You don't have to be perfect, but you have to do your best. And as a result of that, you can be completely healed from that relationship. And that's all I know. Okay, Zach, nobody gives a shit what you think, nothing personal. But this isn't about what you think. I don't know. I thought it doesn't show itself or come forward like bipolar or schizophrenic people, but don't show until they're in their 20s. So what? That doesn't change anything. If I've heard that too, that BPD erupts in their early adulthood. Just because it erupts in early adulthood doesn't mean that they fell in love with you and then there was something that you did. It was going to happen regardless of you. You just happened to be the one that was there to watch it. So yes, you misunderstood. That would be a really great thing. Then you can go back and try and rewind it in your head, and maybe if you had done something differently, she never would have become borderline. No, if she was going to become borderline, she was on her way, and it was going to happen no matter what anybody did. Got it? All right, that's it. That's it for me. I wish you guys all the best, and I will see you when I see you.